Two crises are currently keeping the world in suspense. German Chancellor Scholz has now explained himself in an interview about the Russian approach in the Ukraine conflict and clears up what he calls illusions in the fight against corona. After much criticism accusing the federal government of dealing too hesitantly with Russia in the Ukraine crisis, Olaf Scholz has now taken a stand in an interview with the German newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung. This is a threat to peace and security in Europe, said Scholz, referring to the deployment of around 120,000 Russian soldiers near the Ukrainian border. The territorial integrity of the countries is one of the achievements of the understanding after 1990, so borders should not be moved by force. Law and rules must apply and not military power, said the Chancellor. In the interview, Scholz rejected criticism of the federal government's position towards Russia. I have formulated clear words, they apply, and what the German government, what we Europeans have agreed with the American government applies, namely that it would have high costs for Russia if there is military aggressions against Ukraine, said Scholz. The Chancellor rejected Russia's demand that NATO should rule out Ukraine's inclusion in the defense alliance. There can be no such guarantees, he affirmed. The inclusion of other Eastern European countries is currently not on the agenda anyway, he said. The first priority is to avoid sanctions. However, should Russian aggression occur, the head of government advocates careful punitive measures. Prudence dictates choosing measures that will have the greatest effect on those who violate the commonly agreed principles, he says. At the same time, however, it must be considered what effects sanctions would have on Germany. No one should harbor the illusion that there is some measure that has no consequences for us, and he wants that. But I still think it's wrong that they are not giving defensive weapons to the Ukraine. But he agreed with the European allies with punitive measures, which measures are possible. We have to be able to act in case of an emergency, and that's what we will do, said Scholz. But still, help the Ukraine. The Chancellor also commented on the fight against the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. In view of the rapidly increasing number of infections, he spoke out against easing the corona measures before the federal state meeting that happens today when I'm filming this, so for you yesterday. I'm in favor of continuing on the path we have taken, he said. In any case, it is certainly not appropriate to relax the rules across the board in the middle of the Omicron wave. There is no need for course correction. At the same time, the Chancellor warns of hopes of a quick end to the pandemic. We must not be naive. It's an illusion to believe that in 3 months the pandemic will just miraculously be over forever. Well, wise words, Mr. Scholz. When introducing a general obligation to vaccinate, he would like a majority in every respect, he said, among the people, in Parliament, in the parties. He is confident of being able to achieve a majority in his own government. At the same time, Scholz defended the classification of the question as a decision of conscience. This is a major social repositioning that is not only being carried out by the Chancellor or the federal government or the Bundestag or the 16 states, but by us as a community. He was still convinced of the introduction of the obligation. Without a vaccination obligation, we will not be able to bring the quota to the level that is necessary so that we can put the pandemic behind us, he said. But still, it would have been the job of the government to bring that legislation on the path, and that it would have been faster, and it's for the Parliament, of course, to vote, and everyone every time has to vote on his conscience in Parliament, even if there are whips everywhere. I know that, but it's always with a conscience, and that would have been their job. But I'll see you in my next video. Bis gleich.